We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
Sometimes the baying mobs have a tendency to turn around and bite those that have been urging them on. And these last weeks have provided ample examples of the left cancelling itself. From Whoopi Goldberg to Jeff Zucker, it seems that those who live by the sword are likely to suffer a fate at the same implement. Well, nobody's been following this grand eating of its own closer than Liberty Nation's chief political correspondent and in-house satirist, Graham J. Noble. Welcome to the show, Graham.
Thanks, Mark. Good to be here.
So what I want to know, Graham, is these folks who get themselves cancelled on the extreme left, surely they must have seen that the dragon they helped create would come back and burn them, mustn't they?
Well, one would have thought so, perhaps. But then again, I think there's a certain amount of hubris at play here. And the folks that really kind of started and promoted this whole cancel culture thing, they realize that they have some very powerful institutions on their side. I mean, they basically have the world of academia, they have the larger part of the entertainment industry, the larger part of the media.
The government.
And now the government as well, yes, and also the larger section of corporate America. And so I believe that with that kind of weight of power and influence behind them, I think they probably for a while considered themselves immune to becoming victims themselves of cancel culture.
Yeah, it seems that there's almost a lack of responsibility in this particular faction of the left. They conjure up grand dreams of revolution and remaking a nation on the ashes of the last one that came before, and then they gasp in horror when things go so badly wrong. Now, I've got a great example here, the Black Lives Matter protest. Now, I can see why folks would want to protest any unjust killing by the police, but then we should all be angry about that. But then the riots came, the burnings, the lootings, the attacks, and even the murders, because there were murders. And the folks who pushed it all, they look on it and they wonder, how did it all go wrong? What's the mindset here that explains the reaction?
Well, I think there's a couple of things at play here. And I think the first thing is that those people who really have made cancel culture a major aspect of American culture these days, they are zealots, really. They're fanatic. And of course, the main characteristic of zealotry or fanaticism is a very narrow-minded kind of a single-mindedness, if you like. And that single-mindedness leads one to disregard the potential for unintended consequences. It's the end justifies the means attitude. And so the end goal is what they're in pursuit of, and any collateral damage that is caused, even possibly to themselves, is not a consideration. Of course, I will say one thing about the Black Lives Matter movement, since you brought that particular organization up. You know, we shouldn't forget that they are primarily driven by promoting a Marxist agenda. And the idea that they're actually concerned with protecting Black people is nonsense. And that fact is proven, of course, by this defund the police campaign that they began. And of course, defunding the police most negatively affects those Blacks who live in crime and drug-ridden inner city neighborhoods. So, you know, that Black Lives Matter has never... Black Lives Matter has never concerned themselves first and foremost with the welfare of Black people.
Absolutely. You have some of the co-founders there, Patrisse Cullors, for example, and in their manifesto, they write about how they want to destroy the idea of the nuclear family, which, as we know, has been one of the drivers of not having a nuclear family has been one of the drivers of poverty and crime in recent years. And of course, all these funds that have come in and they end up buying mansions in Canada, as we've seen in recent days. You hit the nail on the head. It's from a Marxist standpoint, and anything that doesn't go along with the Marxist standpoint must fall before it. Now, During these recent calls for cancellation that we've heard, it's notable that the White House is actually getting itself involved, especially with regards to Joe Rogan, the podcaster. Now, they don't mention him by name so much, but to have the government siding with censors or self-appointed censors, it seems a step too far. Now, it's not Joe Biden's role to demand that free speech be curtailed. It's his job to protect everybody's right to use it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely it is. It's one of the first and foremost responsibilities of a United States president is to protect and defend the Constitution. And what goes along with that is protecting and defending everybody's constitutional rights, including their First Amendment rights. So it's really outrageous that the White House has directly inserted itself into this battle to censor one set of views and opinions, and even ones, not just views and opinions, but in some cases actual facts, actual verifiable facts that they just don't happen to find convenient. And so that's a dark road that we're going down when literally elected officials, particularly the commander in chief, is getting involved in these kind of ideological disputes. That's definitely not his place.
So is there a tipping point on the horizon, Graham? A moment when people say they've had enough, people of all political stripes, and they say, this has gone too far. Do you see that happening?
Actually, to be quite honest with you, Mark, I actually believe it's already happening. I believe that we've passed the tipping point, because I honestly believe that the vast majority of Americans, whether they vote Republican or Democrat, I've had it up to here with cancel culture, and they see the damage that it is doing to everything. And I believe that most aren't going along with it. The people that are still pushing it are the extremists, are these left-wing, I come back to using the word zealots. That's what they are. They're basically conducting like a scorched earth campaign against anybody who doesn't agree with them, regardless of the consequences. But I would point out this, and that is that, of course, a lot of people and organizations on the left are themselves becoming victims of cancel culture in a way that they didn't intend. Ironically, since cancel culture is pushed by the extreme left, what is ultimately going to kill it is free market economics. And we're already seeing that. I mean, CNN, MSNBC, their ratings have been in the gutter for some time now, and that's because of what they do. That they've given up journalism in favor of being propagandists. But also, if you look at recently, this thing with the Canadian truckers, great example. GoFundMe, which is a crowdfunding website. It was being used to raise money to support these truckers. Now, GoFundMe has in the past deplatformed certain movements, certain organizations, certain campaigns with which it did not agree. And it did the same thing to the Canadian truckers, got itself in an awful lot of problems. It's now going to be investigated by possibly multiple states. And not only that, but look at it this way, Mark. GoFundMe had almost become a household name. Most people have heard of GoFundMe, even if they don't use it, even if they've never been to the site, they're familiar with what GoFundMe is. They're familiar with the company. But how many Americans up until very recently had heard of a crowdfunding site called Give, Send, Go? So this is one of the unintended consequences of cancel culture, is that GoFundMe have managed to make a competitor famous, and they themselves are now in trouble. And a lot of people on the right are going to indulge in some cancel culture and walk away from using GoFundMe, and they're going to go to Give, Send, Go, which is now actually hosting crowdfunding in support of the Canadian truckers. And it's like the rise of Rumble as a competitor to YouTube, the rise of Gab and Parler as competitors to Facebook and Twitter. So yeah, it's all. I believe we've already reached the tipping point, and for the cancel culture fanatics, I think it's all down here from now on.
Graham J. Noble, thank you ever so much.
You're welcome, Mark. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. After this short break, we tackle the legal loopholes of the Durham investigation. Don't touch that dial. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
We're doing it for real, really real. Liberty Nation.
And Jeff Charles, contributor for LibertyNation.com.
I think we're starting to make an impact. Liberty style, fighting for freedom.
The tracking poll sponsored by Liberty Nation for Thursday.
Mentioned by Dan Bongino, Rasmussen, Jordan Peterson, and
I can
others.
do it again if you want me to.
Cited in Mark Levin's American Marxism.
I think we're starting to make a really big impact. Get noticed. We're doing it. Rock on. I'm gone.